comment in the jurisdiction of this board? Anybody would like to bring up? Seeing none, hearing none. Okay, communication shared by board members. I think that's going to be your time
Thank you,
to
Mr. Chairman.
give us a little rundown.
I've put together what I call abbreviated history of the Winnebago County Solid Waste Management Board. It's actually like a timeline of what's happened since the initiation of the solid waste management systems in Wisconsin. It involves the county executive, and it touches the highlights of all of the events that are connected to legislation. I surveyed the Winnebago County minutes from 1973 to 2006. I surveyed the minutes and documents I accumulated with the Solid Waste Management Board since May of 2006. And I put together, I did this abbreviated version so that I could share this with you as I depart. If you got to the last paragraph, you see I've got a little task ahead of me, because I do want to fill in all of the blanks that are not in this abbreviated history, beginning with Warren King, who was with the county for 62 years, 16 as an employee in the highway department. On the county board, chairman of the board, first county executive. He was on the county board after his term of executive from about 1977 to 1996 or so. All that's going to be documented in the comprehensive work that I'm working on. I'm not going to go into the details of what it says here, but the highlights are in 1973, the state of Wisconsin provided for a county executive in the counties. They also initiated a legislation that permitted counties to formulate a solid waste management system. They limited the county executive's authority to not include administrative activities over the boards, commissions, and elected officers. But in 1985, they changed that. They gave him administrative authority. 1975, Winnebago County started the solid waste management system. The older director, Glenn Leverance, then Director John Robbie, Patrick, O'Brien was appointed in 1988. And he served on that, through his death in 2023. Basically, what I'll come up with, in the long form is that Patrick O'Brien was the solid waste management. He was a de facto manager of the whole system. He was a brainchild behind the valve. He was an empire builder, and he was a dedicated public servant, having been a firefighter in the city of Menasha, rising to chief of that department. So that's it. You got it in front of you, and I hope I can complete the long form within the next year or so.
Anything, Mary Ann?
Just sort of as a follow-up to what Paul commented on, I had been looking at the nature of the relationship between Winnebago County and the Solid Waste Management Board. And as Paul referenced in terms of administration, legally, I always go to the source, which is statute, okay? And actually, I made copies for all of you if you were interested. And you see that 5970 is the Wisconsin statute that, you need copies? The one that you can take. Here you go, I have extra. Is the statute that talks about the Solid Waste Management Board. Go to number 2, I try to highlight it. So it talks about the Board of any county may, oh, you didn't get one. Oh, there you go. Oh, sorry, may establish and operate a solid waste management board. So as Paul referenced, yes, this was established. The next thing I want you to look at, okay, that's fine. The next thing I want you to look at is the code, okay? I probably won't get anything. 1, 2, 3. If anyone need more? Okay, so if you go to the code, this is the general code of Winnebago County. And you see 1504 talks about the Solid Waste Management Board. And then if you go down to 1504 sub 4, you'll see the powers and duties that are referenced. And they basically mirror what the state statute 5970 says, with an important caveat. If you look at 4, it talks about powers and duties. And the first line, and I know this is a lot, but I wanted to at least give you some of the backup for this. Subject to the rules and regulations established and amended from time to time by the county board and the county executive. So when Paul was going through the 50 years of the legislative history, he was invaluable. I also went through that as well. And it provided a very murky picture. You know, the pendulum was swinging back and forth. At one point, it was clear that when there was legislation or there was instances involving the solid waste management board having to have financial authority to do something, they were going to P&L, personnel and finance. Then the pendulum swung back, and it seemed like they worked. But then the pendulum swung back as well. So it was a murky picture. The next thing I want you to look at is going back to the statutes, 5917, which is pretty telling, and that is involving the powers of the county executive. Cassie, I can give you copies if you don't get that. So, and I know most of our supervisors have heard me talk about the fact that under 5917, sub 2, talks about the county executive shall be the chief executive officer of the county. And then it goes down to say the duties and powers of county executive shall be without limitation because of enumeration 2A, coordinate and direct all administrative and management functions of county government, not otherwise vested by law in other elected officers, okay? If you turn the page, and this is what it's really telling you need to look at BR. In any county with a population of less than 750,000, which Winnebago is, it talks about the fact that the powers of the county exec shall appoint and supervise heads of all county departments. The last line of that page, which says, notwithstanding any statutory provision that a board or commission supervise the administration of a department, the department head shall supervise the administration of the department, and the board or commission shall perform any advisory or policy-making function authorized by statute, okay? And then what followed that, which dovetails into that, is an opinion from the Attorney General, which actually came in right after the enlargement of the powers of the county exec. And it was issued in 1988. And I tried to highlight what I thought were the important points, which again dovetailed with 5917. It talks about the fact that, again, the Attorney General, it is my opinion that the Solid Waste Management Board is restricted to the performance of advisory or policy-making functions, regardless of whether or not the board is a commission. And then he talks about the fact that my opinion is based on the recent statutory changes expanding the administrative authority of the county executive, which is actually what Paul referenced in a portion of your speech. So given all of that, looking at the statutes, it is my opinion that the county exec controls the administration of the solid waste management department, and the board sets the policy. And that's looking at the statutes. And I know there was a lot, but I wanted to give you this because I know there was a question about this. And I know, unfortunately, at the last meeting, we were in Madison at the Supreme Court, so I wasn't able to attend. And I know this is just for discussion purposes, but at least you have a basis, so when you go home, you can look at it and then we can continue this discussion.
Can you, the difference between administration and policy?
Sure. Basically, policy would be saying which way, the solid waste management board would want to go in terms of perhaps how they want to spend their money, if they want to do a certain type of project versus another type of project. Administration is the day-to-day affairs. Like, okay, we. Okay.
Cut it off all the other times, I'm sorry.
We need to fire someone who is not doing their job, okay? That's administrator. That is not policy. Policy is setting forth the broad. Mike, do you have anything to add?
And
Then, you know, like setting, like you said, the
Goals.
direction that you want us to go and the goals that you want solid waste to do. You know, would be, we want to expand recycling to include these type of objects if we can. Then we take your guidance and we execute what needs to be done.
where does buying a $200,000 fall?
That would fall under you approving the budget.
Yeah.
And once you approve the budget, you've given me the budget to operate, or you've given the director here the budget to operate the department. And as long as they are performing what needs to be done within those limits of the budget, that would be administrative.
So we budget 200,000 for skid steer.
Right.
You go out and get quotes on it and you got 3 different quotes. We have no input at all as to which one
No.
the department buys.
No.
Bear in mind, in the past, we thought we had that control, but we always went with the department's recommendation. anyway, so I don't know that much changes, it's just,
So,
we thought we were being very helpful and
yeah,
helping the department pick out the right one, which they had already picked out, so
yeah,
our only option there is during the budget process.
right, right. Once you set the budget, if limits, then I should be able to, or I gotta quit saying I. The director here has the responsibility to follow the county policies on purchasing. And then make sure that we specify what we need to do with the equipment. And then go out there and basically, the state law says that we have to go with the lowest responsive bidder. So I may want a John Deere skid steer, but Case may come in and have all the same functions and everything like that. So even though my preference is John Deere, legally I have to go with the Case. Unless there's some way that I can disqualify.
Yeah, unless John Deere has a shop a mile away and they've always,
Even that, when I was working for the city of Milwaukee, we tried to argue about trying to keep the same type of squad cars. We had a fleet of 900 vehicles. We were overruled that because we had Chevrolets and we had all the parts for it, we could not restrict Ford from bidding on our jobs. And Ford won. And then this was back in the time where we had dual airbags coming up. Most of our cars were 2 officers, so we wrote the specifications that they had to have dual airbags. So we have room as the department to decide what we need as a piece of equipment. But our hands are kind of tied when it comes out and it goes out to bid.
and what happens when the bids all come through over budget? Does it
Then
come
we have
back
to
to us
stop.
at that point?
We have to stop, and because, well, if it's not a capital item, as long as I stay within the limits of those accounting, we've got 3 or 4 sections.
There's 3 technical sections of
Yeah.
the budget that are controlled, that are budget controls. There's labor, wages, salaries, fringes, other things related to paying people. There's operating. Within operating, there's more controls on travel. So, but travel is included in operating under the code. And what we can't do is we can't add any more money to travel. So whatever is approved in travel is what's approved. But operating, we have the controls. So, if we need to pay, an architect professional services, but our utilities go up, it affects that full broad category. The third category is capital outlay. Capital outlay is regulated in chapter 3 of the county code, which is the county executive has, kind of the authority to say in that broad kind of, we want what we're gonna spend on capital items this year. And then we defend that budget by picking the items, that may come. So in this case of a skid steer, that's capital outlay. If we projected it to cost $200,000, it comes in at $210,000. Administration can make the purchase, but the broad category of capital outlay cannot go over. If the broad capital outlay category is anticipated to go over, then this board would, recommend that the more appropriation be added to that category.
I just had something very similar yesterday, having nothing to do with solid waste, having to do with court council budget, where I was looking, because I obviously like to, stay in my budget, and there was a bill that I received. And I said, well, wait a minute, this object code, this isn't right. But I said, I thought it should be in a different object code, okay? So this main group of others, so I actually called finance and I said, okay, so it's mischaracterized. It's in this object code, but it really should be in this object code. And I was told, don't worry about it because it's in the other category. So you won't be over generally, even though it might show you're over on this object line, you're way under this object line. Again, I am not an accountant, but I just wanted to make sure I stayed within my budget, and they said not to worry about it. So I think that's what they were trying to say, what that means.
So in that same context, right now, I'm a little confused because I'm hearing sort of conflating the power of the director versus the power of the county executive with regard to who is providing the administrative guidance.
Well,
So let me just give an example, skid steer.
that's
Board-
what you're
board-
talking.
Yeah, let's just say the board agreed the budget for a skid steer. Let's say the county executive decides we don't need a skid steer at all. Does he get to veto the purchase of a skid steer for the solid waste board?
This,
I think Mike, you used the word veto, in that case, he has the authority to veto
Let's
at the
not
budget.
use the technical term.
Yeah,
veto.
yeah,
He decides.
not spur, I wanted to make sure, because Mary Ann was
Yeah,
gonna go down to veto.
Wrong word,
Yeah.
wrong word, okay.
Yeah.
The administratively, he decides, I think this skid steer is good enough and and the board and the solid waste board should be able to live with it for another year.
okay,
Does he get to administratively determine that the skid steer is not purchased?
yeah, because he deals with the administrative portion of it.
Okay, so that is again, we're talking about a conflict. You just told us the board has the policy-making authority, which includes
No question.
setting a budget, which enumerates specific things to purchase. There is, if, in my opinion, if you take away, if you say we have the power to budget things
Yeah.
that we say we need, and the county executive come along and say, no, you don't need it, then that policy-making power is irrelevant.
Well, I guess the question is, in terms of how you define.
I'm sorry, Paul?
Veto.
Well, that's, again, but let's not talk
No.
about veto, we're talking, that's what I mean, we're talking about different.
And I think what we're talking about is, if the board says, okay, we're putting this budget together and we think this type of, and again, I think that's a little bit too specified, but if you're gonna say, looking at the general plan, we need a, what is this thing called? A
Skid steer.
skid steer, okay? You would not be able to say, I want the Easter version versus the Nelson version, okay? But again, in terms of administrative authority, it would be ultimately the county executive who would say, yeah, I see that, but I don't believe it needs to go forward. Because again, there's a conflict between the day-to-day operations and his belief that in fact there's no need for this skid steer or whatever the thing is called that you're talking about.
Should all of this happen during budget process?
Oh, no question, it's definitely gonna come.
Yeah, if we get an approved budget back from the administrator,
Right,
that would have the skid steer in it, if he doesn't think it, if he doesn't think we need one, that should be dealt with in the budget process, isn't it? I
well, in
mean,
the budget
so
process, doesn't that, I mean, that happens, you put your
Yeah.
budget together and give it to the
Yeah.
county exec.
Yeah, the real world is, in that type of situation, the county executive would have removed it. If the county executive didn't believe that a skid steer should be purchased, he would have removed it from his budget request when he introduces it to the board.
Right.
So
Yeah.
Mike, I don't know, in 25 years, in 6 years in county government with an executive, I don't know of a situation where, a county executive has flat out said, you don't need a skid steer. I do know situations where through RFP processes and competitive purchasing processes, investigation of the item changes and is scoped maybe differently, because maybe it's a tractor, not a skid steer or something like that within the budget. But I've never heard of it happening, and certainly it could, if a county executive were to change terms mid-budget or something like that, but, in that case that you mentioned, Mike, what would happen is the board would submit the budget to the county executive. The county executive then would remove the item that he doesn't agree with at that point. Then if the county board, adds it back, the county executive can veto it officially. Then if the county executive still doesn't think,
Go to the county board.
This is again, this is where this is getting very confusing and where I believe there needs to be a very clear
Delineation.
delineation and opinion
Mhm.
about specific things. Because when you started off, you said the board will continue to have
Policy.
advisory and policymaking functions, i.e. setting up the budget.
Mhm.
Okay. Setting, if a policymaking function that we have the power to do, to set a budget, doesn't mean anything if it can be, if it's not followed. Okay, there's no point to it then. Who cares what the board thinks about a policymaking function, because that's not power. It's not power if somebody can usurp that power. So I'm still trying to determine, up to this point, this board has been operating a certain way.
Mhm. Well, actually, if you look at the history, it's gone back and forth.
Okay, well, since I've been on the
Okay,
board, I mean, I've been on the board for well over 20 years.
Okay.
And it's been operating a certain way, right, wrong, or indifferent, it has been operating a certain way.
Mhm.
Which gives, and there's nothing to say that, well, it shouldn't have been operating that way, therefore all of the decisions it made in that 20 years are now void, right? I mean, any decisions the board made, it had been given the power by the county board to make those decisions.
Mhm, yeah.
All this board deserves a clear, if there is gonna be a change in the board's power, it needs to be clear. It can't, I don't wanna be coming here 6 months from now learning, well, yeah, but sort of, but no, but yeah, but sort of. This is either the board has the power to do this as it had in the past, or it doesn't. And I think this board deserves to know exactly what those distinctions are, because right now, I just heard something that completely is contradictory. You have the policy, you have the ability to make policy, which means to set the budget. You just don't have the ability,
To do day-to-day operations.
well, no, just to make decisions, to have those decisions on the budget that you set up. I know what a budget is. A budget is a blueprint set up by the policymakers.
Mhm.
That blueprint is expected to be followed if the policy is gonna be followed. If the policy is not gonna be followed, then the power that the board had when it set up the budget to begin with is irrelevant. It doesn't matter. If anybody can come along, and this is no offense to anybody, I'm just saying that we need to know what the difference is.
And versus hearing, again, I am looking at the law and the statutes and the code and the attorney general opinion, everything that I'm seeing talks about, administrative resting with the county executive and policy resting with the board. There is no question about that. So you're saying, but what is policy and what is administrative? And then I go back to administrative is day-to-day operations. Buying the, what's this thing called, the steer?
Skid
Steer? Okay.
You need to get one of them.
I would like to see it before I walk out of the building. Okay? I would like to see it before I go out of the building. If, your board says, okay, I don't know, how much is a skid steer? $500,000? I have no idea. The Easter versus the Nelson skid steer, okay? You guys don't get to decide it's gonna be the Easter steer versus the Nelson steer, okay? The county executive gets to decide that. But then your question is, but wait a minute. What if we want a skid steer and we reference it in our budget and the county exec is saying, no, we don't think we need that. So again, during the budget process, you put your budget together, you present it to the county exec presents it to the board. You certainly have a voice in what you're saying.
And we've done that all along, is presented the budget, or John Raby presented the budget, and it was always gave the county exec a chance to kick the can,
And then was there
occasionally
back
the
and forth?
budget and eventually got approved, so.
And I think there was always, not that, and we just sort of talked about this before, there was always a representative from the county executive at these meetings. Even when Mark Harris was county exec, my understanding is John Fink always appeared at these meetings. There was a direct line of communication between Mark Harris, and this board, or Pat O'Brien, I quote this board, is Supervisor Eisen said, Pat O'Brien was the board. And so I think there was always a give and take. So, you know,
Emphasizes how much we need to work together, that's
hands down.
for sure.
Hands down. And again, looking at the history, and I mean, I just sort of, so we talked about in May 1988, legislation passed which provided the Solid Waste Management Board shall perform advisory or policy-making functions. That was in May 88, okay? In June 93, and these were just picking certain things. Legislation submitted by Solid Waste Management Board and Personnel and Finance Committee authorized the transfer of $15,000 from one Solid Waste Management Board account to another. Now, in November 96, and this is telling, again, this was probably before you came, 96. Solid Waste Management Board, or I'm sorry, the Winnebago County authorized an audit of the Solid Waste Management Board finances, listen to this, contingent upon approval of the Winnebago County Solid Waste Management Board, okay? That was in 96. And then in 97, there was a resolution submitted by Pat O'Brien and Jeanette Diakoff during the annual budget session calling for exempting Solid Waste Management Board from capital outlay budgeting requirements. It was withdrawn by Supervisor O'Brien because he knew he probably had overstepped his bounds. And then we continue, then it went back, and then we have October 2008 when Supervisor Eisen submitted legislation to incorporate solid waste budget into the Winnebago County general budget. So anyway, again, we talked about back and forth, and we talked about the code, and how the code is subject to the rules and rights of the county board. So, you know, and there are checks as well. There's nothing. The check on the Solid Waste Management Board authority is also the power of appointment. Because again, you know, the county exec appoints, the county board confirms the appointments, affirms or objects. So, I mean, there are checks on this authority also, so.
Yeah, I think, Mike, to answer your question directly, you're coming up with a what if that's so specific that I can't think of an instance where, and it certainly has happened, I'm sure, in the history of Wisconsin county government, but in the 3 years I've been here, we've not outright said, you know what, it's been approved by the board, we're just ignoring the will of the board. You do get into constitutional issues because the county executive is a constitutional officer of the state of Wisconsin, in the state of Wisconsin, and the board's obviously got the constitutional legislative powers. What a county executive does typically, under our code, the request for capital purchase is made outlay, this is a capital outlay purchase. And he determines how I'm going to bid it, let it, what it is, things like that. In your extreme, what happens if the county executive decides, puts his foot down and says, I've opposed that throughout, I took it out of my budget, got added back, keeps getting added back, I'm just gonna refuse to do that? I don't know, in a county administrator county, I'm sure the county administrator would get fired, that happens, that has happened. But in a county executive county, I don't know, I can find out specifics in the 12 counties that have county executive, if that has ever occurred, where a board passes a specific item in the budget, and then it doesn't get done, and because the county executive says no. I don't know, other than COVID, I don't know of a county executive doing, because budget controls, county executives did stop orders on spending because they thought revenues were gonna go down.
So now you're incorporating again, so we've really got the three legs to the stool, right? We've got the solid waste board, we've got the county executive, and we have the county board.
Right.
So you're now referencing the county board.
Yep.
As the fact that because they approved it, that's where the power lies. In other words, that's where, because the solid waste board, remember, we're supposed to be the policymaker again, so I'm
Yeah.
I wanna follow
So
what.
is the county board.
No, I understand, so the point is, but up to this point, the county board has sort of acquiesced to the solid waste board in terms of who made those determinations, and I'm not, well, I understand things change, and I understand that we have to clarify. I want clarification. I don't like surprises. I don't like decisions being made without the legal authority to make them. So I don't know what is next here in terms of, if you're going to give us a specific guidelines to say, here's what you used to be able to do in the past, you had the power to do. Here is where you no longer, for example, approving the quote unquote skid steer. There was also a specific, so I'm not trying to, I don't think my specifics are that out of the ordinary. There was something that occurred early this year where we talked about purchasing something, but then we delayed it. Kathy, what was that
No,
again?
it's gonna go into the capital improvements.
Yeah, or
budget.
is that what it was, that we were gonna do something that was capital in
And
nature?
Ethan said, or he advised, he sent an email that said it would have to be given to the county board to change the budget for a capital, change. And.
Is that what it was? I guess.
That's what it
And
was.
that's, the contractor's been
It was
purchased,
a capital improvement.
it's been purchased.
Yeah,
Uh,
it was the
that-
concrete, I think, the
that
concrete.
you
project.
advised would need to go to the county board for approval, and I said, no. The county, the solid waste board has always had the final say on, these items. Plus the fact that in spite of the fact that the, solid waste budget is in the appendix, county board, at least during my tenure, has never, made changes, to, that budget.
So where did that one land?
Say again?
Purchased and done.
No, okay, but what was the process to get it? In other words, what was the difference between the way we used to operate and the way we're supposed to operate now?
Can I interject for a second? I have to humbly apologize that I didn't go through this, abbreviated history in more detail. Because I ran into this back in 2006, when I noticed that the solid waste board was not in the budget. And I, sent emails to all the supervisors to put them on the alert of this. And I got, Chuck Ornstein had contacted
It was director of
John
finance.
Bodnar, and John Bodnar sent me an email, telling me that I was perpetuating, on the edge of a walking forum and get myself in trouble. But then he went on to say, and if you look at your abbreviated history in the last paragraph on page 1, please also be advised that the solid waste board operates under the authority provided in section 5970 parent 2 statutes, as well as pursuant to chapter 15 of the code of Winnebago County. Pursuant to those laws, and this is a quotation, the solid waste board is a quasi-independent board with authority to tax, purchase equipment, employ personnel, and accept funds, which is independent of the county. The county board may check this authority in two main ways. One, by limiting the authority granted to the board pursuant to chapter 15 of the county's general code. And then he had a mistake. He said B, by controlling the appointments of board members. It is not mandatory that a county have a solid waste management board, but once created until abolished, it functions independently from the county if given all those powers enumerated in section 5970 parent 2 stats.
Yes,
As an
yes.
independent financial entity. Presently, the inclusion of the solid waste board's budget in the county budget would be informational only and not affect the county budget, nor would such inclusion affect the solid waste board's budget or any action taken by that board. Now, that opinion was reinforced, reiterated by Mary Ann, the corporation counsel, in a letter to, Mike Norton, who was complaining about the fact that, the solid waste board didn't have to go through the county board for approval of other things that other departments had to. And she had written back to him, and I got a copy of that, and she repeated this verbatim.
Well, not about the financial law. I don't
But
believe
anyway,
so.
but the point is that for the 18 years I've been on the board, we have operated under a business model that is basically a quasi-public, operation. And it has been set aside, and it has been overseen. If you can remember, for the 18 years, at least since the time, say, I've been on the board, John Fink, who was the executive assistant preceding Ethan, he was at practically every solid waste board management meeting, keeping track, of us and all of our activities. Essentially, Mark Harris permitted this board to operate because he wanted to protect his rainy day fund, which was the retained earnings that from here you can see it grew from 13 million to 31 million in my tenure on the board. And, he also, if you look in our, minutes, and compare those minutes with any other department, in the county, our minutes are meticulously detailed. And, anyone who would read those minutes, particularly the county executive, it would be just as if he were sitting here at the table. He would have that same kind of information and detail, for what's going on from the county board. And when my comprehensive study comes through, I will point to the fact, that, Pat O'Brien was on the board from 1988 to 2023. In 1991, he proposed a intergovernmental solid waste activity. In 2001, it came to be the VOW system. He was definitely an empire builder. And he had the experience of being a department head as the fire chief in Menasha. He knew how to operate. He had a good commissioned officers retirement, I would think, from the state of Wisconsin. And he was in effect the manager of the Winnebago County Solid Waste Management System as it's defined in the law. He actually, he was there for so long, he was there for over the 18 years that I was there, and he was integral to the operation. Now, going forward, as you can see in my summary, okay, the business model of the Winnebago County Solid Management System has enabled the Solid Waste Management Board to increase the earnings from 13 to 31 million. And it behooves the Solid Waste Management Board, and its administrative overseer. Because if you go back and you go through those, laws, the 1985 change that gave the executive, took away the limitation of oversight of boards. If you go to the opinion of the Attorney General, you'll see that at that point, the solid waste board really, was not, a quasi-public, entity. However, if you look at the change that was made in the, at that time, the solid waste board must have been in the rules for the county board. And there was a rule change, 5.23, that, gave the solid waste board, the authority, for advisory and legislative, consultation to the board. So whoever did that misinterpreted the opinion of the Attorney General, because he didn't cite, he just said that, oh, in addition to what you have advisory, and right, advisory and policy,
And
And if you look at the statute, okay, 5970, which talks about establishing the solid waste management board. When you see, again, if the county board is asked to go forward and establish a solid waste management board, you see all of the AQ powers that could be had. The problem is some of them are not purely policy. Some of them, you could argue, would be administrative. But that, again, falls to the fact that under 5917, it specifically says the county exec has administrative authority. And our code, which says, subject to the rules of the county board, this is what the solid waste management board has. And then we've got the attorney general opinion, which is persuasive authority, not precedential authority, but it's persuasive authority, and it's right on point after the change in the law, which was expanding the powers of the county executive. So yes, it is a hornet's nest, but when you look at the words, and the law in Wisconsin is clear, if there is any confusion, you go back to the words in the statute, and you have to follow what the reasonable meaning of the words in the statute says. And when I go to 5917, BR, which specifically says, the last line, notwithstanding any statutory provision that a board or commission supervise the administration of a department, okay, which an argument could be made in some of that 5970, some of those items could be administrative, but BR basically trumps it, because BR says, notwithstanding any statutory provision that a board or commission supervise the administration of a department, the department head, who is appointed by the county exec, shall supervise the administration of the department, and the board or commission shall perform any advisory or policy-making function authorized by statute. That's what I'm relying on. And I understand you're talking about, but what does that mean? What does that mean?
Can I say something? Policy would be, you want us to have the equipment necessary to operate the landfill. Administration would be the schedule of replacement, the type of equipment we need, and so on. So the policy is overarching that we want the equipment, we want it to be well maintained, and we want it available when we need it. Now it gets turned over to administration is, how are we going to get that done? And that would be, we have a 10-year replacement cycle for equipment, or we buy it when it breaks, or we rent them, or we lease them. That's the administrative part.
And Mike, you're struggling with something, the way we've divided this as we've reviewed it is, took both things, we took administration. Administration, what Mary Ann just talked about is clear, day-to-day operations. Okay, that's county executive. Now you're talking about how policy is made, the legislative authority, which is the budget authority that you referenced and what happened in January or February. We've reviewed that, but we haven't completed that component yet on how those board operates with the full-time board. So what we do know, and what you're hearing today, is the day-to-day powers of the solid waste department is fully on the county executive and through his director. There is some muddy stuff still related to the policy making and whether this board has certain checks and balances. There is case law related to these kind of squabbles.
Well, let's stop you there. I don't consider this a squabble, okay? So let's make sure you understand where I'm coming from, once and for all. I completely understand there is absolutely, it is absolutely no one's interest, specifically the board's interest, to be in some power struggle with the county executive. I understand completely that the county executive, we're working with county board could dissolve this thing tomorrow. And just let me finish. So that's not my issue. I like what Doug said. If it means we have to start cooperating better, I've always thought that the lack of cooperation that I've seen on a county level between this board and other department stuff, I'm from a culture where people cooperate, where it doesn't, you're not always trying to find why, create all these silos, whatever. So I understand the point here, and I understand the evolution that maybe needs to take place. But it has to be done with legal authority, with a legal opinion, especially based upon the precedents that we have up to this point about how this board has operated. So all I want is something clear, and I understand we may have some muddiness or whatever. This board, I want this thing to operate well and properly. And I also want, because this board does not take is not appropriated any tax fund. All of the money that the board has accumulated over the years is municipal taxes. Because that's who's basically paying most of the freight, is all of the municipalities that are part of the whole system. So the point is that we need to work together. I agree. And as long, I just want this to be understood and clear, not just verbally, because I would like something that sort of delineates. I understand there may be some muddy issues, but if we're evolving into another, let's build a bridge from where we've been to where you want to be or where we think we need to be. But there needs to be some clarity.
And that's why I provided you folks with copies of the statutes and laws to show you where this came from. Because when we were going through 50 years of history, I didn't see any reference to specific statutes or legislation. There was overreaching statements about, oh, this could be this could be this, but I wanted to dig in to see what specifically we could find regarding the law and what it said. And obviously, the fact that this has been going on for some time suggests that it was maybe it's a big issue and we needed to clarify it. But in terms of administrative, when I look at the statutes, when I look at the county code, when I look at, let's say, this AG's opinion, when I look at the case law that talks about you have to look at the plain language of statutes, there is no question in my mind, the administrative power lies with the county exec. There's no question about that. Budget is a different situation.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so Ethan, I apologize for interrupting.
Yeah, and what I was saying, I didn't mean that there have been squabbles between executives and, boards. Around county, there's a case, Outagamie, there's a case that's probably pretty close to what if the board passes something and the executive doesn't do it, and there's about 3 or 4 cases out in Milwaukee County, there might be a case in Dane County. And so we'll look at, that's what's been taking so long, is we're looking at some of these things that you brought up. My whole point of what I was saying is, we have divided the 2 issues. Issue 1 was we had said that the board doesn't need to approve, the bid for, I don't know if it was concrete or what it was. We said no action item is necessary. What you're hearing today from Corp Council is you will never see an action item in the board approving the purchase directly of an item that's an administrative item.
Is that different than the skid steer?
This is.
But that's
Same concept.
Same concept, same issue,
Okay.
same thing. So that's what today was about. We understand that there's this issue between the budget, how the budget's changed and things like that. When Mary Ann began her analysis, 6590 was brought up, there's other statutes, there's other considerations, and so that has taken us longer to kind of ease out. Does this body have to go to the county board? I don't know the answer to that completely. I've described how other departments do it, how other boards and commissions in the county do it. There's obviously a different statute here, but we look at the whole volumes of statutes, and that's why the final policy-making authority is not determined.
But don't mislead them, in the code, it specifically says, the solid waste management board and practice has gone and submitted its budget to the county exec, it's right in the code.
Yes, so let me close the circle on this, and if we need to. All I'm asking, and I don't know if the rest of the board agrees, is that there be something in writing from you
Okay.
that at least builds that bridge to guide us. The verbalization of all of this is nice, but the next time something comes up, well, it fits this, it fits that. There are things the board that you're aware of and that Paul has enumerated, that the board has operated upon the premise it had the power to do, that it needed to do, that you're now telling us it no longer needs to. I guess I would like to have something that official for the board to have been given to say, you're no longer doing this, you no longer do this because of statute, this, that,
Okay.
whatever,
Can
okay?
you give me, so other than this skid steer and this concrete, whatever, give me other examples?
Chiller for the. Just assuming.
No,
there's-
just-
A budget adjustment for a rental unit.
Yeah,
To get us through until we get the new equipment, the budget's already. been
Yeah,
approved.
and from that standpoint, once we get to this point, I guess what I also would ask is that the board, if something's going on, I would like the board to at least be informed. Oh, by the way, the skid steer, quote unquote, has been purchased. Okay, things like that. Let's add something to the agenda that creates a sort of a laundry list of things that maybe in the past we had approved, but now are being done. Something important, leave it, the director, whoever, this, understands the board needs to be informed of things.
Well, under the director's report, I mean, the director always gave you a report, right? And as opposed to just having director's report, there should be bullets to
Yeah,
comply
that's.
with open, yeah.
It's all about, look, we're all on the same team.
Yeah.
Okay? What it's all about, all of us have an interest on this. Remember, we're part of a tri-county thing. There's a lot of moving parts to what's going on with this board and a lot of other parties that are
I'm totally,
subject to the things that we do. So,
that's why there's been so much time spent to
Right.
try to get this right.
all right, so let's just do it right. Okay, thank you.
and
Mary Ann, we can come up with a list of other items that have come to
Just
the
the,
board. in the
yeah, because
last
I, so
couple-
what is this thing, concrete, what was it called?
It was a
The concrete floor in the transfer station.
Concrete floor in the train.
correct, yeah. We weren't able to do it last year and ended up needing funding for this year for it.
and that'll be very helpful with a somewhat new board coming in.
Yeah,
May,
so
so
I've got
we'll,
concrete floor in transfer station, skid steer, new chiller, and rental unit.
Oh, that was the chiller.
okay. Moving on. That was the most communication we've ever had. The
You
one.
got a lawyer to it, that's what can happen.
There you go. The one thing I'd just like to add is, went on the, recycling trip, Paul was there. It was, what else did we have? Jim Weiss was there, yeah, and, first of all, I've never worked there, I don't know how those people can keep them pulling and picking stuff, we got to watch the robots working. They work way faster than we do. Think of wise investment, so, Kathy certainly took us around and showed us everything, and it was. There's a lot of stuff happening in that recycling facility. I don't know if Kathy wants to add anything to that at all, but,
Yeah, it was a good turnout from Winnebago County. We also had a representative from the town of Neenah and a rep from town of Inland show up. We introduced the administrator of the recycling program up there. She went through a little PowerPoint presentation to kind of show what the robotics do and what it means to our facility to have robots now. And then they had a rep from the company who we purchased the robots from. And then the tour of the MRF was done with our attendees. Went really well, very positive comments and feedback back from everyone. I mean, for our facility, the processes about 100,000 tons a year. Certainly the robots are gonna help with the staffing situations we've had in the past and just keep on top of new materials that come into the facility. They're smart, they're AI, they're learning, and we're excited to have them on the, I guess, equipment list there.
and the other thing that I got out of that I thought was hugely important, when we had a different company doing the hiring for us, we were operating at 60% of what we needed, and we switched to a different provider for labor, and they're at 105%.
Well,
staff.
but yeah, that might be a little mix of the information. At one point, about probably 5 or 6 years ago, we had a local company who did more warehouse type work that had provided us with staffing. We switched to a company that specifically provides staffing for MRF operations. That helped quite a bit, but then during the COVID years, we saw a significant decline. So over the past 3 years, we were operating more of 50% on sorter line of what we needed. So we had to move personnel to the key areas and kind of let some contamination go through because there was no one to sit at that station and pick. So right now with the current situation, the company we are using found another source of individuals who will temporarily work in that kind of an environment. We know it's not a preferred job by any means. But the people that are coming in new to our country, legally integrating into our country, they oftentimes don't speak English, don't have, appropriate housing. So they'll move into a position that they can do a job, get paid, get some English as a second language, communications, and then they move on to a better job. So it's kind of a temporary hold. We don't know if this 100% staffing will last through the summer. We don't know if it'll last through a year, but at this point, we're happy that they're back up to 100%. But we're also happy that we have the robots as backup because, clearly that's going to be the ultimate thing that carries us through for future year staffing. And we'll scale back staffing as needed, through attrition, we can scale back staffing because now we have robots in those positions.
Any other communication? Let's go to approval of the minutes. Or a motion.
Move approval.
Jerry, since he's on Zoom,
Good question.
I don't believe.
Can Gary move to approval? He's not a voting member.
I'll move to
Yeah, I
approve.
would
There you
prefer,
go. Yep.
yeah, he can.
And is there a second to approve?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. That's a rule that has to get changed with the new county board. You can make that up.
You'll have an opportunity on the 16th.
You guys passed it. That's your rule.
Well, at the committee level, it certainly creates issues, no doubt. Before I go to the director's report, does anybody have any information on a new director for this board?
That's
part of the director's report.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I've been called worse than Paul. Okay, landfill gas engine replacement status.
This opened, in my opinion, a can of worms. We had, plans to replace engine number 3 at some point. I don't know what John's plans were with that. Engine number 3, I think, is our oldest engine. And it is getting worn out. Earlier this year in February, we had engine number 4 actually ingested a piece of a breathing tube into the turbo. And we've looked at repairing it, and it's like $920,000 to repair it. A new engine is $990,000. So we're actually looking at potentially 2 engines to replace for $2 million. What we need to really do, and what the new director is gonna need to do, is take a look at where we stand with our landfill gas production to see exactly how many engines we can support and how long it's going to be lasting. Rather than we go and spend $2 million on engines, only to find out that we may or may not even make the money back on electricity generation to pay for the engines. I know there's a couple other options that John had been looking at, that for the use of the gas, but I think we need to explore those more too. Because that was all premised on us being able to provide a certain quantity of energy. And if we don't have a long-term source of the gas to provide what they're asking for, it's gonna be difficult. So the incoming director, is going to have to take a look at this and get some answers. I've talked to our consultant, and their answers to me haven't been satisfactory. There's a lot of, oh, well, we can do this, we can do that, we can do this. Yes. And when I pressed him for some of the specifics, his response back to me, well, I'm an engineer, I'm not a finance guy. And it's like, I'm sorry, I'm an engineer and I'm asking these questions, so that should be out there. But the big question is that we've got to look at is, what is the future of our gas and how long is it gonna last to justify getting more than one engine? So that's where we're at right now. And yes.
We had a potential contract with a bit mining company.
Oh, yes,
Is that still in the works?
I've slowed that down because some of the terms that I don't think you guys were informed about was, we were supposed to guarantee them a certain amount of energy for 10 years.
Ah,
And what I saw with the curves, since that was going on, it's like, Fourth was saying, well, maybe at the end of 2025, we would only have enough gas for 2 engines. Well, that plays into the guarantee that we're giving this firm that we can do, is it 2 megawatts that they wanted? Or 1 megawatt of power, for 10 years. Part of the other terms was, if we can't give that to them for 80% of the time, they will buy the power from WPS and we put the bill.
ah,
So,
okay.
Was there also a noise issue with the way?
my concern is, there are 5 locations in the country that have bit mining. And it's not just bit mining, but there's other places that have server farms where the noise is like being next to a jet on idle at the airport. So, the questions that I posed to both was, if we do this bit mining, what is the level of sound at the generators? What's the level of the sound at the fence line? So that we don't go into a project and all of a sudden now we've got a whole subdivision complaining that they can't sleep at night. And I don't have the cities right now. Little Rock has got 2 bit mining sites that they have a complaint about. A township in Pennsylvania, there's a city in Texas where the citizens are just at the board on a continual basis saying, I can't sleep. So there's a lot of questions that I had that I don't know if they presented it to you when you guys gave the guidance to go ahead with them. So I'm trying to dig into that. And unfortunately, I'm playing two games. You know, this is a full-time job to try and figure out what we're gonna do with the landfill gas. And that's the big thing is, how much gas do we really have? You know, right now, it kind of looks like we're a little bit below the projection curve for it. And how much are we going to see, you know, when is it gonna become the end date where we really can't justify operating engines to make electricity?
And the last engine that we bought intentionally was a smaller size engine, just the thought was the smaller one could keep running longer as,
Right.
so replacing engine 4, my understanding was a big dang engine that,
The price I got is for the smaller engine,
okay, gotcha.
yeah.
Good.
So, you know, and there's a lot of things, you know, I don't know what John looked at, but I have questions on how we came about to where we are right now. And I'm not sure how much he shared with you all, with the specifics, you know, and when I saw the contract, and actually, we have like a draft contract, and usually my experience is you define the terms of what you're going to do, and then you write the contract to the terms. Not that you all of a sudden have a contract with all these terms in here and you're just going back and forth. You know, you get a proposal from somebody, you negotiate the terms, and then you finalize it with a contract. So it's a little bit out of the way I'm used to seeing how things are going. But we're talking about a significant cost with engines. And before I would tell you guys, we need to buy the engine, we got to have a plan for it. And at our last planning meeting with both was, well, with the loss of engine number 4, you know, and the gas, you know, that kind of relooks at the financials for the Vespine deal, and maybe we just run with the 2 engines and, number 3 will last as long until we get to the point where number 2R can do it, or we just go to a flaring situation. So there's a lot, and what I'm just seeing is right now, there's a lot of things that I don't know how well they were thought out before they were moved forward.
Well, and the one thing that certainly did happen is we saw the gas levels dropping.
Right.
And as we watched them going downhill, all of a sudden our contract ran out and Power and Light or whatever, the energy company said, oh yeah, we're only gonna pay you half as much as we were paying before. So now that slippery slope turned into a sharp hill going.
Right.
And, you know, between the maintenance and a full-time employee, certainly there's a lot of questions. Well,
What's our outlook for continuing to produce electricity for WPS?
Right now, I
You know,
think,
we have the engines that we have, and are we providing them with
Yes.
a steady stream of electricity?
kind of, you know, when I talk about steady stream, it's like we provide 1 megawatt all the time. We have, basically what we're doing is we're operating the engines because landfill gas is so dirty. It's a lot of maintenance with those engines. So you know, the engines go down about every 2 months and we have to clean them. And when they go down, our production rate goes down. So yes, we are providing electricity to WPS on a daily basis.
Are we able to realize the cost of expense of operating?
I can't answer that for you right now.
Okay.
I don't have that information.
Do we have the expectation that we could, on the engines that we have, that are functioning? You know,
That's what I want, that's what I'm trying to look into, I haven't had the time to look into it in depth. And that's what I feel the new director is going to need to take a look at. And look, balance how much gas production we have, the life of our engines that we've got. There are laws out there that WPS or any utility has to take the electricity that we create with alternative sources. It doesn't say that they have to pay us a top dollar for it. And there are people doing rooftop solars, there's solar farms going out there, there's the people putting up windmills. There is becoming, when we started this 20 years ago, there weren't an awful lot of sources of alternative power for the utilities. Now, it's a buyer's market. It used to be a seller's market. So we will always have an outlet for the electricity that we make. Whether we can support our operations 100%, I don't know. And, we're gonna have to take a look at it, because we're gonna have to get rid of the gas one way or the other. Either we have to flare it, or we have to make electricity out of it.
now, are you familiar with what, Allegheny County has done? They've ceased their production of electricity.
I've heard
And
about
they
that.
converted to, they're converting the gas to natural gas.
So it is natural, what? I didn't really want to bring this up. 20 years ago, when we built the jail, Len Leverage and Pat O'Brien wanted us to buy the gas. And I told them, one, landfill gas is only half the energy content of pipeline gas. So I'm gonna have to have equipment twice the size in order to get the same energy to heat and cool the buildings. The gas is so dirty that I'm gonna be spending excess money to clean my equipment. They chose not to put what's called a cleaning skid on the gas when they started their whole process. Had they put a cleaning skid on there, we could have created what Allegheny County is doing. Pipeline quality gas that goes right into it. So part of the problem that we've got right now is we're using $1 million engines for air filters. That's why we're having problems with these engines. Because we're burning filthy gas. It's got nitrates, what is it, siliconates or something. And that's all going in there, and that's dumbing up the engines. So,
Yeah.
we went down the road 20+ years ago because it was so expensive to put a cleaning skid on there. But I dare say if we'd have done a good cost benefit analysis, we might have found out that it would have been more cost effective for us to put a cleaning skid on there. And then we'd have pipeline quality gas, we could have burned it in the jail, we could have burned it in the highway shop. And we'd have gotten the energy content that we wanted. So, it's water under the dam, we gotta deal with what we got now. And that's something that the incoming director's gonna have to take a look at and say, we've gotten to the point now where, well, actually, Snell Road, we're almost to the point now where we don't even have to flare the gas there anymore because the production is so low. So we're gonna have to look at what the business model for making electricity. If we can beat the cost of flaring it by making electricity and, lose less money doing that, that'd be the way to go. If it comes down to the business model says it's more cost effective for us to lose less money flaring it, then that would be the recommendation that we should be coming forward with.
Well, do we need to have, an additional, another consultant? Because it sounds like to me, you're not getting the, feedback, from Chris Anderson.
I think-
That, had a rapport with, John Raby. over the past, dozen years.
I think we need to have a director here that questions more. And ask the hard questions.
We need to have a director that has prior, directorship of the landfill.
It would help, it would help.
Certainly, if you had a closed landfill,
Yeah.
that would go even further.
Yeah.
Well, not that, and under 5970 sub 2, it says that the manager for the system shall be trained and experienced in solid waste management.
Yeah, whoever is the next director or somebody on staff has to be, I guess, is it a licensed landfill supervisor?
Facility manager.
Facility
for the
manager.
DNR, yes.
Yeah, so, so the director that we're looking for will have those credentials. But the bigger, I think we've gone down the path with both for so long, and there's so much corporate history here. And we're so close to having a landfill that is like totally closed, and we probably won't have to worry about the gas anymore until we get a new landfill. I would say maybe we look at that in the future and put it out for an RFP to see who else is available other than Flow. Just because I think we need, as a county, we need to look out for our best interests. And too many times you can get too close a working relationship with consultants that a lot of things are taken for granted. So I guess, I've said my piece with the engine replacement. There's a lot that we need to take a look at, I think. Maybe if you get the new director in here, they will have a completely different idea.
Well, I seem to get the sense that you have, a good handle on the pulse of what's going on and, the direction, and the parameters, of the issue. And, I'm going to leave here with a clear.
Overly simplified, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but the landfill gas that we have, I would compare it to gasoline that's been sitting in the can with oil mixed in it
Yeah.
for 3 years. And now you buy a brand new lawnmower and you try to get that brand new lawnmower to work with that old shitty gas, and that's the challenge that we have. Do we spend $1 million and try to run it with some garbage gas?
Right, it is my opinion, and it goes back from working with them when we built the jail.
Yeah.
That we should have done something to clean up the gas, and it might have, when I first started here, we used to have gas turbines at Snell.
Yep.
And gas turbines couldn't handle the gas, and they were too expensive to operate. And then we went to diesel engines.
And what we heard as a board is that we spent all that money to give you guys cheap heat and cheap cooling, and you chose to never use it, so.
I'll tell you what it is. We looked at the boilers at the highway shop burn the gas. When it got down below 30 degrees, we could not produce enough heat with our boilers totally on landfill gas.
Yeah.
So we had to take one of the boilers off and put it on pipeline gas. And when we got down below 20 degrees, we had to take both boilers off. And it's like cheap gas. I told Lead Leverage from the start, we don't want your gas, we want your waste heat. And that when we put the absorption chiller in at the jail, that was a big financial savings for us for it. But once again, because the gas was so bad, the engines would go down and I wouldn't get the waste heat in July when I needed the air conditioning.
Yep.
So I would go back onto the old air conditioning and the rates would go up. So,
All more reason for more communication.
yes.
None of that was communicated very clearly to us.
I don't think so. And I think the incoming director has got a lot of baggage to work through from the past to try and get you guys some honest and concise and complete pictures of what we need to do. I'm not saying that Vespine is not a good idea to go with, but I want you all to know, you know, John didn't tell me anything about that deal before he left. You know, the big thing that got me was, if we can't provide the power and they have to buy it from WPS, we pay the difference. So not only do we lose our income, now we're gonna be paying, peak load charges because we're just buying it off the line. So back to the engines, we've really gotta take a long-term look at what the gas is. And if we can justify spending $2 million.
Totally agree. Moving on to number 2, is that a Ethan issue,
No,
I'm assuming, or?
Probably tell you.
Okay.
We've had, interviews. And I believe John is in the final throes of negotiating with, a successful, a good candidate. And hopefully, I'm hoping relatively quickly, that person will be able to fill the chair. And I would be glad to work with whomever it is to help them get through the muddy waters that's left with us. So I'm hoping the next time we meet, there'll be a new director that can be introduced to you.
That's good news. Okay. Household hazardous materials.
Sure. This report I generate on an annual basis, just to share information as to how our, programs. Sorry, it's okay. How our programs have, done over the last year. Cassie will leave that one up on the screen, but it was distributed in the budget, or I'm sorry, the packet. 2023 versus 2022 information. We had 24 operational days of hazardous waste collections. We had 2 clean sweep events, 1,175 users of the facility, so that was a slight increase from the previous year. We collected 49,373 pounds of material, so that was close to the previous year, a little bit higher. Ag material, we collected 811 pounds, and we did put 1,242 pounds back out into product exchange. If you recall, mid-season last year, we made that adjustment to get those materials that were on the FBI's watch list for improvised explosive devices. We want to make sure that material was not put back out onto the shelf for people to potentially take without being noticed.
So is the product exchange still happening? We've just limited the types of product that is in the product.
Good question. When we discussed that last year, the board decided that product exchange would not continue beyond 2023. So 2024 season starts on April 10th, and we will not have a product exchange at that point.
And do people know that yet? Have you taken a bunch of abuse from that yet, or have they figured it out, or?
They have figured it out. I posted it immediately last year, when we made that decision for the board. So it has been posted from June or July or whatever that date was. It was posted in the room for the users who actually use the room. They could see that the memorandum was posted. Our website and our, mailers that we send out to our communities have all been updated that there's no product exchange. We've taken a few calls, so myself, Cassie, and I know our associate staff have taken calls, people not really happy with it. Seems to be 2 to 3 people, same people. I haven't heard anything else back from anyone else, but I think it's the same people are probably the problem children too.
No surprise.
Moving on to the universal waste summary, again, information I've shared in past years. 2023, we had 591 pounds of outbound e-waste going out. We're going to continue to see that number going down. It's not that we're collecting fewer units, it's the fact that those big heavy CRT TVs are now officially coming out of the street, so we're not seeing those big TVs, which is great for those of us who love the trailer. Appliances, 135 tons were collected, tires, 98 tons. That usually wavers between 120 to 100 tons. In past years, typically in the fall, I get a call from some farmer or somebody who's bought land and they have a whole pile of tires. It didn't happen this last fall, so that's probably why it's down that amount. Plants, 4,180 units, were sent for recycling. So again, that has been up and down. It really depends on, you know, how many users are bringing material in. The next bullet point, there should say 2023 yard waste summary. So 2023, we had sent out 2,594 tons of, yard waste materials. We used UWO biodigester through like the third week of November. They shut the facility down, gave us a few days notice. I had to switch plans. And the new plan for the end of 2023 was sending leaf and plant material to Vilgus for soil amendment. And then the chipped wood waste was going to Brown County at that time. There will be a new RFP on the street coming up here soon for handling that material, which is regulated by the DNR.
Well,
Do you understand, do you know what the story was about them shutting down the biodigester?
I have no inside information on that. I received one phone call from the director of that program. He had very little information. And I tried following up with him a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago, and all the phone numbers are disconnected, so I have no idea what happened. with
Well,
that program.
somewhere I had read, okay, that Brown County was sending, materials, from Brown County to the biodigester.
Okay,
In addition to what we're doing and whoever else is doing. And I was, in the back of my head, I wondered whether that might be a good investment. If it's a viable operation, a good investment for the Solid Waste Management Board, to undertake, to take the, operation of that biodigester. In my travels, in insurance up in Oconto County, I dealt with a large dairy farmer, who, had, a digester, on his property. In fact, the engineer who, established that, engine, Jenbacher, that ran, that, facility, came down to, our, meeting and, examined the, facility engines that, were operating here, generating electricity. So the question raised in my mind, is whether, with some of the retained earnings that this, board has accumulated, and with the change of future allocations, I would wonder if that might be the, next addition, to the, services that we provide, as our services change from time to time, as we gave up, leasing, garbage, units.
they
So,
put that on the new director's list. They can build it right on that corner lot here that we're trying to come up with.
Cassie can record my great thoughts.
Okay.
Well, you know, just to expound on that, Kathy and I are looking at some of that stuff. You know, there's different ways to do it. A number of years ago, I went to a presentation on sustainability and, Mike Hunterhart for Yellowstone Yellowstone is, nothing leaves there, it goes to the landfill. So, you know, that would be a model that would be great for Winnebago County, but I don't think it's gonna be, and we never get there. But we are looking at ways that we can utilize the yard waste, because we both have seen information that is probably the next material that will be banned from landfills. So, you know, I think Kathy and I both share the same idea that the less that we can put underground, would be the better part of it. It's just getting people to cooperate. You know, we started looking at, between Parkview and jail, we probably have 2 to 3 tons of food waste a week, a month.
That would be,
I think a month going into the landfill. And to just get people, even in the offices, to separate out the right materials, so that they don't go into the garbage is a challenge. You know, I'll go on video right now and just say, people are lazy. And trying to get them to conform to what we need to do to make these programs viable is gonna be the real big challenge.
and markets, outlets, where do you go with material and how do you get the best use out of that material? You know, composting is one thing, but if you can collect the methane that's going to be generated off that material, no matter where you put it, you may be ahead, because now you have a second product that you're creating.
And UW, wasn't that the, part of the purpose of that
Yeah,
digester was the
They were-
food? You gotta mix the branches and leaves with food product in order to make it work, correct?
exactly, yes, and that made the best product for them, and they collected gas and put it back out into the grid, so that's what that facility is set up for. It's set up for food waste and yard waste material for anaerobic digestion. It's not set up for farm waste material, that's a different type of a digester, so, but it came with problems too, and those were conversations I had with the director of that program in past years, so. You know, if it were something that the new director looks into, they'd have to understand some of the history with that specific facility as well.
And I wonder if they ran into the same problem with what the electricity was worth, and that was the reason
I'm sure. that's a
they
big part
shut
of it.
down the biojet digester. Yeah. Sorry, Kathy.
Oh, that's okay, I'm next. We, in past years, as I stated, we've, presented just preliminary numbers for our solid waste and recycling tonnages. For budgetary purposes, I look at a 3-year window typically, sometimes 5 years, but I thought it may be more telling to add another year onto that, so you could also see a 3-year, trend. As you can see through our transfer station, we actually had a spike in 2022, came back down slightly in 2023. Direct hauls, we again try to save as much as we can out of double handling material if we can. So if there's opportunities to have customers direct haul material to the landfill, we will certainly work towards that because it helps us save money on operations and actually hauling costs. ADC, beneficial use, that material is going to be direct hauled to a landfill anyway. That's a shared material between the both partners. It's beneficial use in a landfill environment. That material's come down slightly. There's changes in the sludge markets right now. So because our paper mills are coming up with newer technologies or different ways of processing materials, that number hopefully will continue to decline. It needs to go somewhere, but at the same time, we don't necessarily want it in a general MSOU landfill if we don't have to. So you can see overall, 195,416 tons of waste went into our landfills. You can see on the right, I split it between Outagamie County and Brown County. The rows correspond with the outlet. Basically, transfer station tons, 35,897 went to Outagamie, 68,695 went to Brown County. The next line is direct hauls, and then the ADC beneficial use is the third line there. Last year, we were trying to split about 50-50. We came pretty close to 50-50, considering that could change on a daily basis.
Yeah, let's, remind me again, and we may have talked about this again, the decision making here in terms of what goes where, what is that current What are our current priorities or how we're determining that?
Sure, it's based on, the communication that I have with our Brown and Allegheny County partners. The primary concern is we don't back up the transfer station because we want to stay in compliance with the VM at all times. So if Allegheny says, yeah, we're not interested in your transfer trucks at this time, send them to Brown County. And I have a day where we're almost coming out the door. I say, Allegheny, I need to move the material. Can we use your facility for the next week? They're like, of course, send it our way. Now, the plan at Allegheny County is we're trying to fill that landfill before, like, how do I put it? We need to balance how fast we fill Allegheny because we don't want 3 cells operating at the same time. So the northeast landfill has to close about the same time as their northwest landfill is ready to open. There's going to be like a 3-month window where those overlap, where they're trying to cap the northeast landfill and the filling starts in the northwest landfill. So that's right now a target number. It's been bumped forward a few times now. Right now, we're looking at, I believe, January 1st of 2026 to start filling the northwest landfill up at Allegheny. So the other thing you have to think of is as that landfill at Allegheny gets taller, the turnaround area for trucks gets smaller and smaller. So to get our semis up there, they can get up there, but they're not going to have a lot of space to turn around in that site. So when we get to that point and it starts to pinch, then they're going to try to direct all of our materials to Brown County. The Brown County landfill, there's plenty of room. It is filling fast. There's plenty of room. It also costs more to haul there. So on the both side, we're discussing what are the hauling costs, what makes sense. This year, we're aiming more towards 75% to Brown, 25% to Allegheny. That number has not been settled on. We're going to be discussing that number in upcoming weeks after Allegheny has their flyover. They'll determine how much material is currently in their cell by volume and how much airspace is left. And then that'll determine whether we continue to send out Allegheny right now and try to fill it up a little bit faster so that we can then direct to Brown. But again, that's a discussion that's going to happen in the next couple of weeks.
Okay, quick follow-up then. So the northeast Allegheny County is expected to close in 2026. So we
Basically,
may
yes.
have another 1.5 to 2 years potentially.
Potentially to access.
Okay, but what you're also saying is the line of what we were taking on Allegheny from the northeast was going like this. Now it's starting to go like this, more going to Brown.
Yes.
But then once northwest Allegheny opens, then the line goes back up and we'll be taking more to northwest Allegheny. What's the useful life, estimated useful life of that?
That northwest cell,
Yes.
I don't have that memorized. I would have to get back to you on that number.
Okay, but in the Brown County, that's so large, it's gonna continue to.
Brown County has multiple opportunities to
Right.
expand new cells
Right.
and build. They have a lot of property there. So
Yeah.
our current agreement runs through 2042. There's definitely enough airspace within Brown and Allegheny under current filling numbers. Now that can change depending on population growth and all
Yeah.
sorts of other things. But the last study that was done, we definitely have airspace between those two landfills that will go beyond 2042. I don't have that number in front of me right now,
Okay.
but just so that you are aware, yes, there are additional opportunities to expand at the downtown.
Okay, and at the moment, last question, at the moment, is there sort of agreement between the three, is this contentious in the background about, no, we want more, we want less, because Brown County, the idea was they had hauled everything to Winnebago when we were the only one open. Then the idea was, well, now we're gonna haul it there, but then we, on this intermediary, let's open Allegheny, that was sort of the history. Is everyone still on board that this is working well?
No, yes, it is, everybody's on board, it's working very well, and I think when they renegotiated the new MOUs and the new hauling or, cost sharing plan to go forward into
Mhm.
2042, that helped resolve most of those
Okay,
issues. I personally have had no concerns with working with our boat partners. They've been very cooperative, very good about where the material is going, how we're sharing material. who's managing the accounts, all of that, we've been very good at communicating and
Great,
working all the.
Great, good to hear. Thank you.
Okay, so on the recycling side, transfer station, you can see we sent 11,928 tons through the transfer station on recycling. Direct calls 2,831. Primarily, the recycling direct calls were Fox Crossing and City of Nesha. Total tons, that we would report on our reports, 14,759. I have the rug report, and that is something that there's a slight adjustment in the number to that, because there's always material sitting on the tipping floor at the end of the year. So, and we use tear weights within our system, so there's always a slight adjustment of numbers, what I report to our rugs, which is off of our tonnage reports at Winnebago. The recycling tonnage that is the line above that, or just general recycling, that's an Outagamie County report. So it's not doubling numbers, we're not going to add 14,000 and 15,000 together and come up with 30,000. It's just a slight variation because I have to report our numbers through our system to our rugs, and then the BO reports the Outagamie number. So you can see the municipalities are, signing municipalities brought 352 tons through our system. Other are the commercial, GFL, Waste Management, Harbors, commercial tons, most of them are shared amongst the BO partners. That was 3,683. So we have 15,035 tons, which is the highest I've ever seen that number in the last 8-9 years that I've been dealing directly with these programs. So congratulations.
So again, it is 30,000 tons?
No,
It is not counting twice, it's just you're sort of
just calculating the numbers a little bit differently.
Okay.
And that's because there's always material on my tipping floor here at the end of the year. So Outagamie County is going to report a different number with their reports than what I had inbound
okay,
because of that.
so
So,
just restating.
yes, exactly. Okay. All right, and then one more quick summary, and again, these are all preliminary numbers. They all have to be reviewed by our both partners and internal review processes. Just, you know, this one.
No, it wasn't in there when I was in there.
Oh, okay, I just added it. Did I not add it? Was it page 2 maybe? Pull up the original one and see if it has a page 2.
This one?
Yeah. No page 2. There we go. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, and then generally these are our BO numbers, and again, I put 3 years in there just so we can see trends. The landfill, Brown County had 270,000 contributed into the system. Outagamie had 171,000. Winnebago had 126 contributed. Both shared, those are primarily our alternative daily covers, what I call ADCs, and beneficial use materials. 233, 120. So total tons preliminary again through the BO system, 801,693. So we are seeing a little bit of a trend down, that trend is continuing in 2024. At this point, we don't know if it's outside players who are pulling material out of the system, or if the economy is down, so people are spending less and creating less trash. It's certainly something that myself and our BO partners will be looking into a little more closely for future planning and budgeting. Recycling side, you can see our 3 county contributions. For 2023, Brown County contributed about 18,000 tons, Outagamie about 16,000 tons, Winnebago 11,000. And then our shared tonnage, those are those commercial haulers, big accounts that actually sit in all 3 counties. We have negotiated a sharing process on that. So 58,000 were shared. Total tons through the MRF, 104,231. Okay, any questions on that information? Good. Okay, so during, or right before the MRF tour, Paul asked me to touch on the upcoming BO intergovernmental recycling agreement. So this agreement is the original recycling agreement that was dated November of 2001. It was negotiated so that all 3 counties would work together in processing tonnage materials. At that time, we had a couple different transfer stations and, a process worked out that we could handle the material through existing facilities. We then moved into 2008, 2009, 2010, when we built the Tri-County recycling facility. And when that, negotiation started, we adopted an extension, to this recycling agreement. The extension was adopted in March of 2008, and that created a new contract termination date of 12/31/2024. That contract also has 3 successive 15-year periods that can be renewed if it's not already terminated by an existing provision. The termination provision is that an opting out county would have to notify the partner counties in the 10th calendar year of any renewal term. Our renewal timeframe would have been 12/31/2019 if we decided we wanted, Winnebago County wanted to opt out, and of course, that would have had to be a board decision, 2/3 vote. Now, we didn't do that. It's working well for all 3 partners. So none of the 3 partners wanted to opt out or even considered opting out at that time. So that what that tasks me with is myself and the directors and the administrative individuals in the 3 counties will be sitting down in the upcoming months to negotiate terms to extend this for another 15 years. I don't have any details at this point. We have the agreements in front of us. I've reviewed the agreement, I've made some of my own comments, but the 3 partners have not sat down and even started with terms as of yet. There is a plan to start that in early May. So we will start to get information out to our board soon. I have no concerns over negotiating this personally with working with this group. The negotiations to this point and how we've operated on both the recycling and the landfill teams have been very, very well and very favorable to Winnebago County. That's just my opinion on this. Now, I'm not going to go into this with, being a losing partner either. So I want to make sure that we continue to have an advantage of being a part of this program. And we've seen the revenues come back. We've seen this work for our communities, and I want to make sure we can continue to offer the services for our municipalities. Paul?
Yeah, well, if history is any reflection of the future, I was not able to get the details in respect to the recycling experience, but in the 2020 landfill vow agreement that was restated and amended, that was an agreement that was made between the Allegheny County Executive, the Brown County Executive, and the chairman of the Solid Waste Board with the department director. Now, that was the business model that acted as lately as 2020. Now, going forward, my vision of where this takes us puts our county executive at the same table with the other 2 executives. Mr. Harris was at that 2020 agreement signing from the information I gleaned, and he commended the O'Brien and Robbie on their action in signing that agreement. So it's a different world today than what I have experienced on this board in the last 2 days.
I'm just pleased when you brought it up that it was gonna expire. It's like, oh my God, it's gonna expire. The provision was already in there that it would all but automatically renew for another 15 years. I'm totally comfortable that when we have our new director, the new director will have a little chance to provide input into that agreement. My understanding is, other than perhaps a few minor tweaks that just make things even more fair and equitable, it moves on for another 15 years. So I'm hoping that kind of makes you feel comfortable, Paul, and it's maybe a good thing we tried to figure out who's on first and who's on second prior to.
I tripped over that in my.
There you go. You gotta stop tripping like that. Okay.
And just for clarity, our signing municipal agreements will also expire at the end of this year. So in conjunction with renewing the BOW agreement, we will also be reviewing and renewing the signing municipality agreements as well.
Now, that's one thing that, Mark Harris signed over that, municipal agreement to the Solid Waste Management Board. Those agreements were originally with the executive. However, I don't have the exact date right off the top of my head, but, he actually signed those over, the 15 municipality agreements, signed it over to the Solid Waste Management Board under the old model of.
We left power. You have a generator. It ran last summer, no. Let me call Brian. Oh, wait.
And the huge question, do
I
we
heard it.
have to stop if we can't?
We lost
record?
power at the office. Can you come over and start the generator?
You're still on Zoom, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, so just turn your computer around.
We're on emergency backup, so, and check with the transfer station when you're done with that, okay?
Hi, Jerry, can you still hear us?
Thank you. Bye. We have battery backup on,
Oh, so you
and
have
but it only lasts like 20 minutes, so Brian's starting the generator. Well, it's certain outlets that are on battery backup. We worked with facilities a couple years ago to try to determine what was up and.
Okay, so we're still being recorded?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Did we finish the signing municipality? Paul, are you happy with the?
Yep.
Okay, just finally, I wanted to, just as to let you know, Kelly Ryer, our outreach and education specialist, came to me and asked me, how do I feel about boat ramp going into the landfill? Especially if there's potentially a recycling outlet for it. And I said, well, it's not something that we would collect as a program here because of the cost of transporting and managing a contract necessarily now. I can't make that decision now, but what do you have? And she came to me and said, well, there's a facility in Neenah called Becker Plastics that can collect and recycle certain types of stretchy plastic materials. Boat plastic is one of those materials. So I said, well, get some more information. And she came to me with the information that Becker would take the material for at no cost, as long as it's clean. They can handle it at their own site. There would be no cost, no revenue for us. So I said, well, this is a really great idea. Let's get this information out. And Kelly said, well, how about marinas? And she started calling marinas and just saying, hey, are you aware of this? A lot of them weren't aware of this. A lot of them were sending their boat wrap into the landfill. So I tasked Kelly with coordinating a drop-off program with Becker as a one-time event to coordinate these marinas to bring this material to Becker and use it as an educational tool as well. So again, no cost, no revenue for us. It's a good PR event. And right now we have it on the schedule for June 1st for like a 4-hour window.
So the marinas have to haul it there themselves?
Yes, the marinas and the boat shops will have to haul it there themselves. And if it's clean, Becker will take it. If it's not clean, it'll be sent back with whoever brings it in, and then they will have to either clean it up and try again or landfill.
I find this very interesting. I've got 20 pontoon boats that are all shrink wrap. I used to put all the shrink wrap out on Main Street for free and nobody would take it. I put up a sign that I charged $10 for each bundle and I've been selling it ever since. So go figure that out, but it does work great for wood piles and so forth. But anybody that's ever gone across the Butamore Bridge and looked at all of the boats that Skipper Bud has there, now just multiply that. So it's a huge deal.
Yeah.
The marinas can load up a trailer, haul it there that day. You're gonna try to reach out to every marina that you know of and social media and so
Yeah,
forth. Is
yeah.
that the
It'll
thought?
be out on social media. Kelly's making calls to the marinas themselves. She will be coordinating the actual drop-off day. So 4 hours of her time will be put into being off-site for that Saturday. But we're looking at this as really just it's more of an education. It's more of a, hey, marinas, hey, producers, even the general public, if you wrap your own boat, get it in here, get it in during this event, keep it out of landfills, keep it out of the waterways, keep it out from being a wind-blown litter. And with hopes that at some point Becker will take it on themselves within 3 years, I would say. I haven't extended it out, but I agreed to a one-time event. And if they show interest in that, then potentially creating that partnership between Becker and then communicating that on their own and providing a service to our residents. So,
Or them dang
yeah.
free brand boats will fill up on dumpster, I promise you. So.
And maybe, and Becker said they potentially could take other plastics in the future. So if at some point this department decides to do a plastic film recycling program through here and we can make it work financially, that might be an outlet for us, a partnership in the future.
Okay. That is Kathy.
That's it for me.
Suggestions for items for the future? I think we've got Bud, Paul.
Yeah, I have a recommendation for the restoration of the Huber land unto the solid waste management board jurisdiction. I've done the research. I've quoted the February 15th, 1994 county board resolution that transferred it from the solid waste jurisdiction to the county's jurisdiction for $25,000 to reimburse the user fees, monies, and if the transfer is to back to the solid waste management board, CPI inflation would have an equivalent of that $25,000 as $52,884.46 as of February. So maybe for the future, we can bring that to the table. And since we do have Mike Elder here at the table, and some of the resistors from the previous 19, I think it was 2016 efforts to transfer it, and the 2019 effort, since they're gone, I don't think, since the county is the one that owns it, so it's just a matter of whose jurisdiction. I think that solid waste cuts the grass there, don't we?
Yes.
Yeah.
So there's no big deal,
In 20 years, we'll just claim adverse possession.
Not the law anymore.
Establish the next meeting dates. I think we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, May
May 1st.
Probably gonna be in May.
Potentially May 1st, yeah,
when
we'll
we
have,
have new boards. Before I adjourn, I would just like to thank Paul for his wisdom and all the years of service and I love your abbreviated form of the history. I'm looking forward to the completed volume. If we can keep it under a couple hundred pages, I don't read books longer than that. Thank you so much for all you and likewise, thank you for the donuts first of all, and for coming to as many meetings as you did, and we're gonna miss you on the board, we're gonna miss you on this board also. Thank you so much. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Hey.
There you go. You don't wanna get down, Paul?